Well, hello and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and iTWire TV video interview. I'm here today at Qualtrics Experience Live 2026 in Sydney, and joining me is Raen Lim. She's the Managing Director for APJ at Qualtrics. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Alex, for having me on the program. Very pleased to meet you.
Yeah, very pleased to meet you too. Thank you for the invitation. And it was a great event yesterday where we got to learn a bit about Qualtrics and see some of the customers, and I'll have a separate article about that. But I always like to start with asking if you could please share the mission of the company, Qualtrics, and the value that you bring to customers globally in 2026.
At Qualtrics, our vision is to improve the human experience, and specifically in 2026, we want to tie that to how businesses can use experience management to improve their business outcomes.
Now, I recorded this morning's keynote presentations from yourself and from your colleague Vicky, and they were excellent. I'm going to include that video along with this one and include that in the article that accompanies this video. But in your keynote, you described a shift from the old experience gap, data versus understanding, to a new one, understanding versus outcome. And in fact, I've heard from a few people now, it's not about features or benefits, it's about the outcome. Customers want outcomes. That's what they're paying for. So for Australian enterprises specifically, where are most organizations stuck on that spectrum right now?
I think different Australian companies are in different parts of the spectrum. So you have some of the organizations that are really at the forefront where they are already, getting insights from the data that they're collecting, and some obviously are a little bit on the laggard space.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are still trying to figure out how to clean their data up.
Exactly.
If you don't have clean data, you can never get good results out of AI.
Exactly. And for those people who are already at the forefront in terms of understanding the data, we want to get them to the next step, which is how do you use the understanding of the data to drive business outcomes. Yeah. And this was really the crux of my keynote this morning.
Yeah. Now, you made a strong claim that context wins every time, which absolutely is true, over speed when it comes to AI. But in practice, how do you stop organizations from just rushing to deploy AI agents without building that contextual foundation first?
So I think yesterday there was a media briefing, and obviously I think Sean from Symantec, she mentioned about business outcomes, right? Yeah. So it's not about AI being the tool in itself and the final destination, but how does that add value to the business and how does it drive real business metrics? I think that's a very important consideration that every organization has to take, because at the end of the day, no matter how powerful your AI is, without the context that you give it, it's not going to give you the right outcomes that your business deserves or your customers or your employees deserve. It will just go in the wrong direction, even though it's fast. Yeah. So that context is really, really important.
Yeah, well, in the 1950s, they called it garbage in, garbage out.
Yes,
and
exactly.
That's more relevant today in the AI era than ever before.
Absolutely.
So your airline rebooking story in your keynote presentation was compelling. The system read your conversation, matched it against loyalty data, and proactively solved the problem by getting you to your home so you could enjoy the Halloween celebrations, and avoided a lot of chit chat and tears at the counter. Not that it would have been you, but I'm just saying, and a lot of problems. So how close are most Australian companies to actually delivering that kind of real-time, context-aware intervention today?
I think compared to a few years ago where insights was a problem, I think a lot of the Australian companies are already well placed in a position to take advantage of the insights that they have to kind of close the gap, the new experience gap, which is between understanding and outcome. So certainly that is something that is not very far away. In fact, some of the organizations whom you've heard from the media briefing yesterday are already doing that, and having real business outcomes, real numbers at stake.
Qualtrics says it has a contextual advantage no other AI model has, built on billions of interactions over 2 decades. So how do you respond to skeptics who'd say that essentially means vendor lock-in dressed up as a competitive moat? I mean, for me, I think it's brilliant, but I guess it's a question that people would be interested in the answer to.
I think what we're concerned about is, we don't want to focus on the vendor lock-in, but really organizations should look at technologies that could help them close the experience gap. Yeah. And by marrying operational data with experience data that we've collected over the years, it delivers the outcome, right? And if we deliver the outcome and we continue to create value for our customers, then I think the investment justifies by itself.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, having all that extra data, I mean, we're going to talk about synthetic data in a moment, but that real world data is gold, and it hasn't been tapped into in as efficient a way as we can with AI now. I mean, we can interrogate that data and get instant answers and insights that would have been something that very skilled or special people would have had to do before. And I just think we're living in wonderful times. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think AI accelerates a lot of different things.
Yeah. Well, I've certainly seen that. Now, you mentioned BHP, Fortescue and CommBank as customers closing the experience gap. Without breaking confidentiality, what's the common thread that you are seeing amongst Australian organisations that are actually getting ROI, or as I like to call it, ROAI, from experience management versus those still measuring for measurement's sake?
I think areas where it improves, whether it's a revenue generation, improves loyalty, retention. I think these are key metrics that they can already get value in implementing AI that has context and implementing Qualtrics.
The True Green case study, it's a lawn care company, 51% of concerns resolved autonomously in week one after employing the Qualtrics system, a $70 million figure in additional revenue. I mean, that was dramatic. But lawn care, compared with other industries, it's relatively low stakes, although not for True Green, not for the customers that need it. So how do Qualtrics Experience agents perform in heavily regulated Australian sectors like banking or healthcare, where a wrong automated response carries real risk?
In highly regulated industries like the banks as an example, they would have a lot of rules and regulations that they need to comply with. And Qualtrics being their partner, we pride ourselves in working and partnering with them to understand what the regulations are and where are the areas where we can meet to help them bring some parts of the experience data and the operational data together. As an example, if you're talking about a customer completing a cash transfer transaction, we don't have to know the specifics of the transfer. We just need to know whether it is complete, it is successful. And that itself, we can actually work with the security and compliance teams to make that work and even mask the data of some to a certain degree, such that it still provides value to the customer experience team to make that experience seamless and to help them get that feedback loop. And to kind of iron out any potential issues that they may have in that particular transaction as an example. So there are ways and means to work with organizations, and we want to lean heavily on their guidance in how we can help them comply and at the same time derive value from the solution that we provide to them. Because at the end of the day, again, the context comes from marrying the experience data with the operational data that they're already collecting. And if we're not harnessing the power of it, then I think it's a missed opportunity for us.
Now, you talked about AI scaling friction when it lacks context, chatbots that miss what the customer really needs. Is there a danger that the industry is creating a new trust deficit by deploying half-baked AI experiences faster than it can build the context layer underneath?
I think with every new technology, there's always risks. It's about how do we go about implementing that. And I think, yesterday, Sunny from Zip had a very good story. They were piloting and obviously it didn't do very well and they were going to continue testing and improving it. So I guess it's also, a similar process where you would test out new technologies and only roll it out when you have a certain level of confidence. And that goes with AI as well.
Now, we talked about synthetic panels and they come up as a major research innovation, simulating consumer responses in hours instead of weeks at half the cost. I actually filmed one of the little sessions upstairs before we had the little headset on there, so I got some more information. I also spoke to Sam Ramjan, who gave me some more information on the various consumer and experience panels that you have there. But what is the integrity check for the synthetic information? How do you ensure synthetic respondents don't just echo the biases baked into the training data?
So it's built on our proprietary AI models, and at the same time, we continue to test it as we move along, right? So it's not completely taking out the human element of it, but always have a mixture of it, and that's where the continuous testing that we do helps to keep it relevant and keep out the biases, within the model itself.
I mean, synthetic in the past was always seen as bad. Synthetic vitamins, synthetic turf, synthetic anything is not necessarily, synthetic flavors. But I was impressed at how good this synthetic data is. And I think it was Farah, she actually showed us that there were some areas where, yes, the AI thought it was better to purchase AI tools, but for the because it's AI itself, it had a better view of that than humans did, like trustworthiness and all the rest. But there was a lot of areas where you could see that the human responses and the synthetic responses were very close. I mean,
Exactly.
that can give you insights very quickly, and then your
Yes.
budget for actually asking real human questions can be spent on the really difficult questions, as opposed to just sort of the scattergun approach, hoping that you throw enough mud and it sticks. So this is a
Absolutely.
big improvement.
Yes, oh, definitely. I mean, you know, since we launched Synthetics, we have seen such a big uptick in terms of, you know, the interest in this solution, and I think that the accuracy is going to get even better and better. And you're right, it actually shrinks the time to value, you know, from weeks to even, you know, hours and days, and that's an incredible improvement in the way that we do market research in future.
Now, several speakers today referenced trust as the critical currency. From a platform standpoint, how does Qualtrics handle the tension between collecting the massive amounts of experience that are needed for context? I mean, I know you've got decades of that, or you know, you've got years of that already. So how do you know, collect the massive amounts of experience that are needed for context and respecting growing consumer and employer expectations around data privacy in Australia?
And again, we will work with our customers as their partners, just to understand what are the data that they need to collect in order to move the needle from the customer experience point of view, and in turn the, you know, business metrics. And we wouldn't want to collect anything that is not really that relevant or not directly related. We want to make sure that the data that we collect are really the ones that's going to move the needle for them. And therefore, it's a partnership between Qualtrics and our customer on what would actually work for them and what we can do for them.
You've been in the role for several months now. So what's your honest read on where the Australia and New Zealand market sits compared to the US or Asia when it comes to experience management maturity? And what's the biggest unlock that you're pushing for in this region?
I think the fact that today our conference in Sydney attracted more than 500 customers, it certainly shows exactly. It shows the maturity of the organizations within, you know, ANZ, and at the same time, I think a lot of them are also, you know, again, we talked about the spectrum, right? But I do feel that it has a very sophisticated, or rather the customers have a very sophisticated view of what it could look like for them. And therefore, I think in terms of the differences, I wouldn't say that they are very far behind for US. And they do have very forward-thinking kind of mindset, which is great because it allows us to test out new concepts and partner with them in co-creation of, you know, certain things, or co-pilot certain things together with them to test out how it's going to move the needle for the business.
Yeah, I saw this quote. It said, "It's not, you know, AI is not your AI is your co-pilot, not your autopilot."
Yes,
and I
that's
thought that was
right.
very clever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Raen, without giving me your final message yet, what else do we need to know about Qualtrics that we haven't already discussed?
I think Qualtrics, because, well, we've discussed quite a lot about it, but I also want to reiterate the point that, and this is also one of the reasons why I joined Qualtrics, is that no one else in the world has actually garnered that amount of data, the experience that we've collected over more than 2 decades. And this is something that is very, very unique to any organization. And the way that we have, you know, built that deep structured understanding of how experience connects to outcomes, that is really the true advantage that we can give to our customers that trust us to walk this journey with them.
Now, I also like to ask the people I'm interviewing, as we get towards the end of the interview, if you could please share a memory of your first personal computer.
I think the first computer I had was really young. One of the, I was the youngest daughter of the family, so there were 4 of us. I had 1 brother and 2 sisters. And my father got a really, I can't even remember what the computer was all about, but we had like 2 games that were loaded in those little discs.
Yeah.
And we would just, you know, fight over who gets to play the games first. And that first computer for us was just for games. We didn't do anything else with it. That was a great memory.
Yeah. And the second last question I'd like to ask is if you could please share some of the best advice you've received in life to help you get where you are today.
I think, well, one of the best advice that I received was never say no to opportunity. So every time when I've been given an opportunity, I stop thinking about whether I can do it. the fact that someone has offered me this opportunity means that there is a confidence, and there's something that person saw in me to do it, and I'll just gladly take it. And even if I do fail, I certainly would have learned something about it, and to me that's growth.
Experience is the best teacher.
Exactly.
So Raen, what is your final message to the viewers, listeners and the readers?
I would encourage them to partner with Qualtrics, and knowing that we are the leaders in this field, we want to continue working with them. And if they are not already considering this in their CX programs, I would encourage them to reach out to us anytime. Yeah.
Well, I mean, definitely if you're watching this right now, please have a look at the keynotes, look at some of the videos that I've recorded that are on this same page. From what I've seen thus far, it's been really impressive. It's amazing how much extra capability that AI is given. And this is just the beginning. I mean, I'm really curious to see what we're going to be talking about in a year's time when this is next on. It's going to be mind-blowing. So Raen Lim, Managing Director for Qualtrics Australia, Pacific and Japan, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to speaking with you again in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.